Welcome back. My name is Chris, and in this video, we're going to be taking a look at automating your month-end close procedure in NetSuite utilizing a third-party product called NetClose. So first off, let's just talk about the subject of the month-end close procedure or even the year-end close procedure in NetSuite. If you've ever had to do it, you know that the tool set available to you in native, or you could say standard NetSuite, is incredibly rigid. So for example, if you're trying to utilize tasks, the listing that you have available to you is very limited. You're not able to customize it in any way. Also, when you're trying to lock off general ledger accounts, you are stuck with only accounts receivable, only accounts payable, or just all accounts. There's also tools for the month-end close procedure that are very helpful to utilize. Things like a Flux Analysis, where you're able to compare the one period to another period for any particular account and the change between those periods. This is a tool that's simply not available in NetSuite whatsoever. Also, if you're trying to do reconciliations, and I'm not talking about bank recs, but you just want to go through your general ledger accounts, often your balance sheet accounts specifically, and verify that the balances for those accounts is in fact correct, you don't have the capability to do that in NetSuite. You have to do it externally. So what most companies end up doing, if they have more in-depth month-end close requirements, is, like I said, they'll end up doing that procedure in Excel spreadsheets, something external to the system. And then if they have to run journal entries, they import those in to have the system up to date in NetSuite. For some companies, if they have even more elaborate requirements, they'll then rely on third-party products. And there are a few products available. Some of the big names are things like Flowcast, Blackline. The problem with all of these third-party products is that they are external integrations. They're platforms that exist outside of NetSuite that are then bolted onto the system. And that comes with a lot of additional limitations because you're not baked into the system and able to rely on a lot of the tools and pieces of information that already exist in NetSuite. So that's where NetClose, which is made by NetGain, is different from all of the other alternatives. NetClose is embedded into NetSuite, and so you are able to rely on things like existing saved searches, drill down capabilities with records, existing segmentation, or even being able to set up and configure the system itself. All of these become available to you by being embedded into the NetSuite system itself. And so in this video, I want to take a look at how you can automate your month-end close procedure by utilizing NetClose. All right, so here we are in NetSuite. And before we actually dive into NetClose specifically, I do want to make sure that we're oriented to what we're dealing with in native NetSuite. You're probably very familiar with this, but just to make sure we're on the same page, if we come up here to manage accounting periods, this is where you'd actually come in and do the month-end close checklist. So we can scroll down here and we've got here, let's say January 2024. We can click on this checklist and we're brought to this. And this is really kind of gives you a frame of reference of where we're coming from. This is a fixed, rigid task list of, it's probably about a dozen tasks. Now, if there's a particular task on here that you don't want, too bad, it's stuck there. If there's a task you want to add, or maybe you want to customize something, you can. If you want to lock off certain GL accounts, you're stuck with all of AR, all of AP, or just everything. There's no additional route you can take on that. So this is what you're dealing with in native NetSuite. Now let's take a look at what you can have with NetClose. So starting off with the tasks, we'll come up to NetClose, we'll come down here to tasks, and we can come down here to task list. Now, before I jump into that, I should point out that I'm really just going to show you in this video a handful of tasks, especially ones that relate directly to automations. But for everything that I show you in here, there's 4 additional features or tools that I'm not showing you. This tool, when I'm talking about tool, I'm talking about NetClose as a whole, is incredibly deep. So please keep that in mind. This is not a full walkthrough of all of the capabilities of NetClose, which are vast. So let's just go into this one particular tool, which is the task list. And I really should start off by just orienting you to this kind of the way that this tool is constructed, because you're going to see this a few times just in this one video. On this task list, you can see we have all of these filters up above. So you have so much depth in which you can slice and dice this report. And if you find there are too many and you really just want to rely on a couple, you have the capability to limit it down to whatever different filters you want. And then based on what you filter on top, you're going to see the tasks listed down below. Now in this particular case, it automatically brought me into the current period, which is December. Obviously, nothing has been created yet for December, so we'll change that to reflect a period that has some more information for it. So let's go to August 2025. And again, I'm not setting any other filters, so it's going to show me the full list. If I scroll down here, you can see we have this long list of various tasks. So if you have a smaller company, all these tasks might be assigned to just 1 or 2 people. Or if you have a larger company that is a very in-depth month-end close procedure, you might have 15 different people that are all going to have their various tasks that they have to execute. So what we have here is tasks on the left. We have who is responsible for doing that task on the middle here. And you can see there's kind of 2 bubbles. The one on the left, like we can hover over this and we can see the preparer for this particular task is Paige. And then on the right, we have the person that is assigned to review that task and ensure it is done appropriately. So in this case, it looks like I am the reviewer for this particular task. And we've got a lot of other information on the right. I can even drag this over. We can see things like the due date for the preparer, how frequently this task is being generated, et cetera, et cetera. So let's actually go into this particular task so we can see some of the additional information. I'm going to click on this lock accounting periods task and it pulls this up. Now, keep in mind, the way that all of these tasks are being generated, you have a few different options, but when we're talking about automation, the best way to do this is you set up task templates, because more often than not, you're going to have the same tasks from period to period. So you can create once a task template, in this case for locking accounting periods, and you can automatically set it up with the right configuration so that it's auto-generating that task for every new period. So this would be an example where this thing has been created based on a template. No one had to manually come in and create it themselves. And from here, we can see a lot of the basic information, who's supposed to prepare it, the reviewer, the risk level, how important is it, etc. And then down below, we have a bunch of additional features. So for example, we can add comments directly into this task. And you can even see an example of that here. It looks like Braden Miller tagged Paige, and all he had to do was come in here and say @Paige. It immediately tags in that person because you have these users already configured in the system. And you can type in a specific note like, please close the periods I have reviewed. It emails Paige connected to this task, so she can simply click on it, go to this task, provide whatever information is needed. So that's included on all your tasks. We also have dependencies, so you can set up an entire system where any particular task is reliant on other precursors to be completed or at least started before you can get to the current task. And then you can see the tasks that are going to come after it. I'm even going to show you a report later on in this video where you can see that entire dependency breakdown. So this is incredibly useful. If tasks, like having, let's say 100 tasks is not enough for you, you can even add additional sub-steps to your tasks. So it breaks down almost like a tier system. And then of course, we've got features like history. If you want to have a full audit trail for this particular task, so auditors can come in, they can see everything that has occurred. And then if they want to see evidence and proof that this task was adequately completed, they can also come in here under documents. This is where the task preparer can drag and drop any needed documentation, verifying that the task was appropriately completed. So with all that in mind, let's back out of here for a second. And I want to point out a couple additional features. So let's come up to the filters for a second. And let's say more often than not, I don't want to just see all tasks. I want to see the tasks relevant to one particular person, probably myself. So, but I know I don't have a lot of tasks in here. So I'm going to limit this down by Amanda. If we select Amanda, it automatically filters it down to just the tasks relevant to her. So we've got this listing here, and that's nice. But one feature we have in particular is we can select all these and we can come up here and we have this mass update option. This is something where you can come in and let's say Amanda is sick this month or she's on vacation. You know that all of these tasks are going to have to be done by somebody else. Well, instead of having to go in task by task and edit them, we're talking about making this more efficient, more automated. We can come in here and we can assign all of these to a different person. Just like that, it'll update all the tasks. And even a step further from that, let's say Amanda is not just sick, but she's actually been fired. So from now on, we know she's not going to be the preparer. Well, again, we don't want to have to edit every single task for every period and have to go in and change the original template that's automatically generating these tasks. We can come in here, we set it to, let's say, Braden. We come down here to save. We can save not only these tasks, but also update the template. This is a feature we have here with Mass Update, and that concept of making a change and also kind of reflecting it back in the original template is built throughout this tool set. You'll see it constantly. It's all about making the entire procedure more efficient. So that's looking at tasks. Now let's take a look at another tool with reconciliations. So we'll come up here to NetClose, down to reconciliations, and let's come down here to the bottom and do all reconciliations. So we open up this tool, you're going to see it has a very similar look to it, and you'll get the feel for the NetClose product. It all has a certain uniformity to it. So we come here, and again, it's filtered automatically to December. Let's change that over to August again, and we'll see our full list of reconciliations. Again, if you're not familiar with reconciliations, the concept very simply is we have our accounts on the left. Technically, those are actually account groups, but let's think of them as accounts. We can see things like accounts payable, accrued marketing, fixed assets for equipment. Every single one of these can be one or more accounts. And then what's happening is we're looking at what was the ending balance for that account and how much of it can we explain and verify that that is a correct balance. And then ultimately, the most important thing is there anything left unexplained? So for example, if you have an account like this, where the ending balance was $98,000, in this case, it's for the period of August, and we only have 8,000 of that is currently explained, we've got this large unexplained balance of $90,000. So what would happen is we have someone go in there and try to explain, basically verify what is happening with this. So we can click on this, we open it up. This is particularly for accounts payable. It provides all the information we need right here. And one of the major elements that's useful about NetClose and the fact that it's embedded in with NetSuite is, for example, we were looking at the balances here. We see the GL beginning balance, the credit activity, the ending balance, any one of these numbers. I can simply click on the number and it drills down into that number. It provides me a report showing what composes that figure in the first place. So we can see that ending balance of 98,000 is composed from these 4 different transactions. I can filter it on the right here if I want to kind of customize this however I want to maybe look at a wider period or a more specific type of transaction. I can also drill down into any one of these particular transactions. So if I'm wondering what's happening with this bill, all I have to do is click on it. It opens up a new window, and on that bill, we can see exactly what's going on. We can even edit this bill by coming over here and make any changes if we find that there was a mistake made on this particular transaction. All of that is by the fact that NetClose is embedded in with NetSuite. So closing those tabs, let's come back to a reconciliation, and let's actually close this particular one. We're back up in the overall tool set. We can see all of our reconciliations, what are going on with them. The thing I think is most valuable with this particular tool, and you'll actually see it on a few different NetClose tools, kind of tying back into that concept of the fact that it is embedded in NetSuite. NetSuite already has, or you can create in NetSuite, saved searches, and you can utilize those saved searches to provide your explanations. And they're even made in the titles, you can see them here. So in this particular case, there was a saved search created to pull whatever valid balances we should have from an accounts payable perspective, and that can be fed in to provide an explanation. So theoretically, you have these reconciliations already auto-generated. So every month they simply get created as a matter of course for whichever accounts you want to have a reconciliation for. You have saved searches already existing in the system. Those provide what should be the proper balance, in other words, the explanation that should link in with the ending balance for that account, and you should be resulting with a 0 unexplained balance at the end. Then with all of that automated, that's where you can come in here and you can look over on the right. And if you see anything that's not zero, that's where you want to drill in. And that's where you can spend the actual man hours to investigate as to who made a mistake, what journal entry got run or maybe didn't run that should have been. And that's where you can kind of fix problems that actually exist and not waste a lot of time with all of the busybody work. So that's a perfect example of automating in relation to reconciliations. Now let's take a look at Flux Analyses. So we'll come up here to NetClose. We'll come down here to Flux Analysis, and let's take a look at Review Flux Analysis. So I mentioned this earlier, but just to reiterate it, this is a tool that is incredibly helpful for most businesses, and it's simply not available in the standard NetSuite account. So let's come in here. We're going to set a scenario. You can think of this like a template in relation to generating a Flux analysis. So we're going to click this August to September. And just to recap what the point of a Flux analysis is, we are seeing for every one of these accounts that we have on the left, we can see for these particular periods, August to September, what was the change and what percentage of the balance changed. So the change might be $1 million, but if $1 million is only 0.2% of the account, that might not be a big deal. You might not really want to check into that. And you can set and configure all of this. You can set thresholds where if the change is not big enough, it gets ignored. And if the change is big enough or it's dramatic in some way that you want to go in and find out for that particular account, why did it change? We're concerned about that. Maybe it's a good thing, maybe it's a bad thing. Either way, we want to know what's happening with that particular account. So we can come in here, let's open up this 1002 savings. We click on that, and really what it does is it opens it up. It gives us a lot of the basic information, which we can see provided here. But more importantly, the whole point of a Flux analysis is we're looking and providing that explanation in the instances where there has been a dramatic change, either in the positive or the negative. So that is where we can find down here the ability to put in those explanations. And the automation element of it that is particularly useful is the fact that NetGain has brought in AI capabilities to their NetClose product. So we can see right here the AI explanation. So for every one of these accounts, as it's doing the Flux analysis, the system will look through. It can look through at historical information. You can also provide guidance and prompts to kind of hone in how the AI algorithm is going to be reviewing this balance and why it changed, the various transactions that hit it, etc. And in this particular case, I'm going to draw this out a little bit. It provides this full explanation automatically when this Flux analysis is created. So we can simply grab this in. If we're the preparer for this Flux analysis, we can copy this into our primary explanation, maybe make some small adjustments as needed, forward that on to the reviewer, our accounting manager, etc. The next element I want to take a look at is GL locking. So this is another one of those things where you just don't have the capability to do this if you're using either native NetSuite or one of the third-party options like Flowcast. You do not have the ability to do what I'm about to show you here. We're going to come up to NetClose, down to Close Management, and you can see here, lock transaction and account segments. So as you saw in that original NetSuite list, you've got AR, AP, or all. That's it. Here, we can come in here and we can set for a particular period, let's say for November. We can come in and we can specify any one of these options. We can lock down by subsidiary. We can lock down by transaction type. Maybe we want to lock down by a particular user. This is a great option where you can come in and you can say, hey, I want this thing entirely locked off except for me, because I know I'm still handling this account. I might have to run a CSV import, or maybe this is integrated in with a ramp account or something where I know other information is going to come in. You can customize and basically put in whatever locking capabilities you want. Limitations for integrations, for CSV imports, for exact users. You can even set up multi-tiered locking where you say, for this particular subsidiary, I want to lock by class, but for that subsidiary, I want to lock it down by these two exact users. Whatever you want, you can get as granular as you require. The last thing I want to show you in relation to this is the reporting capabilities that come out of the box with NetClose. So let's actually take a look. If I come over here and I click on this, I can open up a dashboard specifically for NetClose. So this is an example of something where if you've got the month-end close preparers for various tasks, they can have this dashboard and they can come in here. Again, you can modify all these portlets. This is all embedded into NetSuite, so you can craft it however you want. You can pull in metrics, you can pull in, this is something that would be more applicable, maybe not for a task preparer, but for a manager who's looking at, okay, good, how are we doing our task completions? Looks like accounts payable is 100% complete, but accruals is at 0%. That's an area where I'd want to dig in and find out what's happening. Probably can come down here and take a look at all the tasks by particular assignee and figure out, well, who is dropping the ball? Why is Josh not doing all the tasks that are assigned to him? He's got all the accruals, etc. So, and one additional thing you can keep in mind with this is not only just customizing the various portlets you have here, but you can make however many custom dashboards that you want. So if you want your preparers to have one type of dashboard and then your auditor to have a completely different dashboard, the manager gets a third one, you can do whatever you want. It has all the native customization capabilities that come with NetSuite. You also have an entire suite of reports that come out of the box with NetClose. So we'll come up here and let's come down here to reports. We'll click on this. You'll see here we have probably 24 reports out of the box, but this isn't even everything. There's also plenty of Suite Analytics workbooks that you can access by coming over here to Suite Analytics. But let's just comment on a few that we have right in front of us that I think are particularly important to note. So coming down from this, you can come in here and take a look at, for example, the reconciliation audit report. So if I click on that, this is an example of a saved search, again, pre-made, that is incredibly valuable for your auditors. They can come in here, they can see all the various reconciliations that were done, who's responsible for them, when were they done, opening balances, ending balances, whatever you want. Because this is a saved search, you can add in whatever custom columns you need. You can customize this thing to the nines. Backing out of this, let's take a look at several of the other reports we have out of the box. Coming down, so up at the top, we have a lot of reconciliation reports, but then we have an entire listing of task-related reports. So for example, my task due today, that's a simple save search. That's a perfect example of one that we could tie into a portlet that on your custom dashboard for your task preparers, they can have that listing right there. So they know for today, these are the tasks that I should be working on. We can also come down here to something like task dependency. This is something I commented on earlier. This is where you can come in and you can see kind of like a full matrix. Right now it's filtered by just this one period. But if I go down to, let's say, August, you get that full listing of what tasks are reliant on dependent tasks and also what's going to be the task that's coming up after that. So from a manager's perspective, this is a great report to come into and go, hey, what dependent tasks are holding up the tasks that should be gotten done? Is there something that's going to bottleneck with a particular person? Are there a lot of reviews that apparently are getting held up in one particular place that are stopping an entire chain of tasks that come after it? All of that can be accessed on this one report. Coming back from that, the last report I want to show you is actually way at the bottom here. We have this amortization waterfall. Now, NetSuite does have an amortization waterfall, but if you've ever had to deal with it, you know it is a frustrating tool to use. It's not particularly helpful, and it often just kind of breaks and doesn't show you the information you actually need. So this waterfall, if we come over here, I'm going to change this filtering to go back a little bit longer. So what we can see here is an actual amortization waterfall. We can see for the various categories, month by month, what is happening with our amortization schedules. This is something that for a company that does a lot of amortizations and especially more complex schedules that get modified or sometimes entirely reversed at certain periods, this is an invaluable tool. And for this, not just this report, but honestly, any one of these reports that I've been showing you, you also have the capabilities up on the top to add in additional columns. You can remove certain ones. You can obviously export this into an Excel file. We have the ability to come over here, transfer it over from month to be into the fiscal year. We've got our standard filters all on the right here. So much capability that comes with any one of these reports. So that's how you could automate your month-end close procedure in NetSuite utilizing NetClose. But before we wrap up this video, there are a couple additional things that I want to comment on. So first off, the implementation. When you're implementing NetClose, obviously it depends to some degree on the client and your requirements, but It's good to think about a timeline of 4 to 8 weeks. So within that time, you will work with the NetGain implementation team that will help you get everything set up, any kind of configurations, things turned on that are required, and up and running and able to close your month end utilizing NetClose. The next thing I wanted to mention was something I referenced earlier, which is the fact that NetClose is just one of the products from NetGain. NetGain at this point has become the dominant leader in terms of third-party apps that facilitate the CFO's office. So they've got products like NetAsset, NetLease, NetCash. All of these products really complement each other. And so if you are looking at something like NetClose, you may want to check out some of these other products because they do blend in well together. And then lastly, if you are interested in following up and seeing if NetClose is right for your company, I will include a link for that down below. You can check it out and get a demo. So if this video has been helpful for you, please hit that like button, subscribe if you want to see more videos like this. And with all of that in mind, I hope to see you in the next video.